And that's noon. Let's get rolling. Hi, everyone. Hello again, if you've been to these before. Thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. I'm Derek. I'm a Smartsheet BA here on behalf of Taleo. I'm super excited to be doing our third webinar, going over different areas and key areas of the Smartsheet platform. As the title implies, today we'll be talking about Control Center. Control Center is a very deep topic. My goal today is to kind of introduce it, show you what it's capable of, what it can be used for, and what problems it's built to solve. I'll then use the tool itself to intake, provision, and then archive a project. We won't be getting into the true nitty-gritty of a control center configuration and setup. It's just a little bit out of scope for a 20-25 minute webinar call. But if you had questions about that, or if you wanted to explore further how the data is transferred between projects and truly how the back end of Control Center works, I'd highly encourage you to reach out. It'd be something I'm super interested in and would love to chat about. Throughout, throughout the call today, please don't hesitate to leave a question in the chat. We'll be leaving 5 to 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, but I can see the chat. So if you had something, in the moment that I wasn't clear about or that you wanted clarified, please don't hesitate to put it into the chat. With that out of the way, let's get to it. Here's kind of what we'll be chatting about today. First, as always, we'll be talking about how users can license and access the Control Center application. We'll then ask, what problems does Control Center actually solve for an organization? What challenges might they be facing where they would consider using or setting up Control Center? We'll then talk about Control Center itself. I'll just clarify a little bit of terminology quickly in there, um, just so we're all speaking the same language while I'm going through the demo. And then we'll go through the process of proposing, intaking, provisioning, and then finally archiving a project. And then yes, as I said, Q&A at the end, but if anything is unclear while we're going through it, please don't hesitate. Control Center is an available add-on at business level plans and above. It can be purchased standalone, or it is also a part of the advanced work management package, which includes 11 applications and kind of all the advanced level Smartsheet things such as resource management, data shuttle, and so on and so forth. Access to Control Center is controlled by the system administrator. It's an important note that the only reason to access the application itself is if you're either provisioning projects or if you're setting up the templates and the blueprints for those individual projects. So our management team, who is just viewing these dashboards or editing the data, they don't need to have access to Control Center. And on the other side of that are our individual project contributors who aren't, actually setting up and building these projects. They have no reason to access Control Center either. It's only our people provisioning and again, people who are building these actual blueprints. And we'll talk about what those are in a couple slides here. So what problems does Control Center solve? Well, for starters, and one of the main ones, intaking and provisioning projects can be very time consuming. Creating the individual sheets, creating the data roll-ups, creating our automations, all of that can be super time consuming for these project managers to set up. Control Center solves that. We basically do it once and then input our data and Control Center builds the project around that. On a very similar note, inconsistencies in how these projects are built can lead to a lack of standardization, right? And that just creates problems all down the line with your data. Um, Control Center ensures that all of the data is structured the same. Every project uses the same set of sheets and reports. All of the data is rolled up in the same way to the same place. It's one of its most powerful features. This naturally leads to increased visibility. Again, everything is being rolled up to the same place. We know where everything's going. We know how all the data is being processed and getting there, right? And then last one, and again, a big one, is retroactive change management on, within a PMO can be an absolute nightmare. It's if we changed our organizational policies on a project and we had 100 projects on the go, going through each of those individually and making those changes would be an absolute nightmare. And not doing that again leads to the lack of standardization and the lack of transparency. Right. Not only does Control Center let you build these projects and build these templates in the same way, you can apply the changes retroactively. So if you have these changes come down the line, you can apply it to all your projects that are ongoing without having to do the legwork of seeing what needs to be applied where, have we applied this across the board, so on and so forth. Cool. Now, Control Center itself. So Control Center essentially automates almost every step of this process. From proposal to archiving, everything can be automated with very little legwork from our PMs or really anyone to get these projects up and running. It is best for mature Smartsheet customers who are reaching those bottlenecks that we talked about already with the base Smartsheet platform. So, 500 projects in flight and built out reports and dashboards and workspaces. That's really what Control Center is built for, right? How it actually works is we create blueprints, and these blueprints contain templates. And I'll define those both in the next step. But these blueprints are what we use to create these projects, right? Instead of having to do it manually, we say, here's my project. I would like to build it using this blueprint. And Control Center essentially does the rest. It's just on us to input the data. It requires no coding. And as we talked about already, project level data is automatically rolled up into portfolio summary sheets. And from there, we can build, portfolio dashboards that are updated in real time with all of our ongoing projects, all super customizable. And again, single source of truth, transparency. It's really great for that. And then kind of as we talked about already, it's a standalone application. You cannot interact with the back end of Control Center itself from Smartsheet. It has its own URL, controlcenter.smartsheet.com. Cool. Some terminology. The top of our hierarchy is called a program. For most cases, you will only need one program, but if you had many different departments, if you had a very mature scenario, you could have multiple programs. Programs contain blueprints, and these blueprints are what we use to make individual projects. Every blueprint will contain a set of templates, and these templates are the individual items, sheets, reports, dashboards, and those are what are created when we choose to create a project with a blueprint. Amazing. That out of the way, let's jump into a demo. So, first thing that I'll show is our template source folder. So this is in our admin workspace. In a real example, very, very, very few people would have access to this sheet, right? It's essentially your Control Center admins that are setting up these config sheets and specifically this template source sheet. This template source folder contains all of the different sheets, reports, and dashboards that will be created every time we create a new project. So this is the baseline, right? And we're going to populate this using data when we actually provision a project. So we have, for our case, we've created a budget log, the project plan, the RAID log, a sheet for weekly updates. We have roll-up reports for all of those, which roll into a dashboard. And this is not the portfolio level. We'll talk about that a little later. This is every single project is going to use these set of 11 items to build the project, right? Our PMs are building these. Lovely. Let's create a project. So this is our intake sheet. This is where projects will be proposed, approved, and so on. I'm going to say this is HR software upgrade. And I have a description ready. This is information technology. I would like to start it, let's say, March 1st, and I'd like it to be done, let's say, by the end of June. The information that you require to be submitted to provision a project or to request approval for a project is of course customizable. For our cases, I just said you need to know what department, when do you need it by, when do you want to start it, and what is the project. Amazing. Response has been captured. Let's go to the intake sheet. Here we can see HR software upgrade has been submitted. For this example, I built it such that once a project was submitted, it would request approval. If it was approved, it would request a budget. And then if all of that was approved, it would go to the operations team to assign a project manager. Of course, this is all customizable, and I will kind of blow through that today. But the process of approvals and assigning PMs and so on is customizable, of course. What's cool, or one of the cool features about Control Center is right now, if I went to provision this project, it wouldn't let me. I've set up rules. I've set up two rules specifically that the project has to be approved and that only the assigned project manager can create this project. Whoops. So this means that even if the project was approved and all ready to go, if I wasn't the assigned PM, I couldn't accidentally provision someone else's project, right? So I'm now the assigned PM. We have a budget, set that, and everything has been approved. So this is ready to go. So amazing. Oops, sorry, clicked on the wrong. This is Control Center itself. This is the tool, and this is the separate URL that we will be using to create this project. Right? Here I can see all of my archived projects and all of my projects that are ongoing. I'm going to create a new one. We're prompted to select a blueprint. Again, we only have the one created for this example, but if you had, say, two or three or however many distinct project types, for example, you had a very specific set of templates for construction projects versus IT projects, you can set up multiple blueprints that have different sets of templates. But again, I've just created the one, a standard project. Smartsheet then tells you which project, or sorry, which templates will be created for this project. You have the choice to make some templates optional. So if you wanted to create additional templates that PMs could use at their discretion if they saw fit, you can absolutely do that. For our case, I've just set everything to required, but you can leave some choices up to the PMs if they want to use certain templates, right? Project name, there it is. It pops up for me because I'm the assigned PM and it's been approved. Here we can see all of the profile data. Best practice says to pull this from an intake sheet. You can set it such that the project manager sets or manually enters it, but best practice is pull it from the intake sheet. And here's our sharing options. By default, I've set it such that the PM is the owner, and I've also said that executives have default viewership over everything, essentially. You can also do sharing at the template level. So if you wanted to grant viewer access to only the project plan, or if you wanted to grant editing access to only the budget log, you can do that from here as well. You can also do that how you would in regular smart sheets, but doing it from Control Center is always easier, right? I will click create. This is going to take a couple seconds, so you'll bear with me for kind of an awkward 45 seconds here. But Control Center is taking our data that we've pulled from the intake sheet, and it's setting up, again, those 11 templates based on that information that we've entered. Right? Just finishing up. Amazing. If there was any errors with your data entry, it would show up here. So if you forgot to enter the description or a budget or anything, it would notify you. Here means there's no errors. That's Smartsheet saying it has received all of the information it was expecting to, essentially. Let's open the project that we've just created. So you can see we're now in a different workspace. We're no longer in the admin workspace, right? And this prevents or helps prevent unexpected or accidental changes to the template folder or the config sheet, right? This is taking place in its own area that is essentially separate from the back end of Control Center. It's the same 11 sheets, reports, and dashboards, but now you can see the names of all of them have been updated. And on the project plan, all of the data that we've entered, the assigned PM, the budget, the due date, name, description, obviously, have all been added. So it's been standardized, everything is in there, and it will be done exactly the same way for every project. It's just on the project manager now to, add their team members or however you want to set it, right? Great. So we've now created a project. We've gone from intake all the way up to provisioning. Let's take a look at what this would look like for a project that's, say, ongoing, right? This is a different project, same set of templates, schedule, health, excuse me, last weekly updates, outstanding rate items. This is, of course, all configurable, but this is being done with very minimal legwork, right? Awesome. Let's take a look at what this looks like now at the portfolio level. So this is all being rolled up. Sorry, I should show this first to the portfolio summary sheet. And this is likely the most important or most powerful sheet in Control Center. Every piece of data that we would choose, right? We can select what data is being rolled up in real time to this summary sheet. The forecast finish date, the status, the budget variance, all this information, and we can choose this, right, is being rolled up in real time and is automatically added when we create a new project and is automatically removed when we archive a project. This sheet is the foundation for everything we talked about at the start with single source of truth, transparency, really accurate reporting with minimal legwork. This all rolls up into our dashboard. Active projects, outstanding rate items across the entire portfolio, our list of active projects sorted by PM. Very powerful, right? When we're completing projects. On both the project level dashboard and the portfolio level dashboard, I've set it up such that there's a section of quick links. So it means that our executives can drill up and down through this data very easily, right? If they want to drill into assigned projects, they can click on this, which takes them to the summary sheet. And then on the summary sheet, there's a direct link. Oops, sorry, that's on the intake sheet. There's a way to access each of these individual projects. So it's super easy to navigate through what could be a very extensive portfolio. Awesome. Last step we'll talk about is the last step in the life cycle, which would be archiving these projects. How do we ensure that we're deleting everything and everything is being moved to a separate area and it's clear when something's been archived, right? For our purposes, the organization wanted to have this done via the intake sheet. They wanted to be able to set it such that it was ready for archive. So I have this checkbox here to indicate that the project is ready to be archived. I'm going to check that and save. And now what this is going to do is go to all of those, go to the summary row and go to the project itself and change the status to ready for archive. And it's going to, we'll go over it, but it'll mean that we can actually use Control Center to properly archive it now. We're back in Control Center. I'm going to go to Manage Program, Archiving. Here we have our different archiving workflows. So you could archive different types of projects differently. Again, I've just set up the one, but you can be very specific with. Construction projects are archived this way, and so you're following regulatory practices and everything is up to code. Use this. Here we can say, what filters do we need to be true in order for this project to be ready to be archived? So I said at least one of the following has to be true. Ready for archive is equal to true, and then these are all changed as well. In reality, this could be set to all of these need to be true because they all change at once, but 6 in 1. We then choose where the actual archived, or sorry, where the individual rows and items are moved to when we perform the archive. So we're going to say, I want all of the archive or all of the project items to be moved to a different workspace, and then I want the intake row to move to a different excuse me. I want the intake row to be moved to a different sheet, and the summary row to be moved to a different sheet. Perform archiving. Here we can see that our project that we marked ready for archive matches our filter. I'm going to check that and say, yes, I do want to archive it. You could, if you had 100 projects here, you can select them all at once. And I'll hit apply. It then gives you a warning. It's being moved.